G'day team, Adam Cogan here from SSW TV. Tonight for our .NET user group we have JK as our speaker. He'll be speaking about common mistakes in EF Core. He's the man we go to when we have any data access issues at SSW, so hopefully you'll find this great. You know, Entity Framework works so well until, you know, things get complicated and you have performance problems. And JK always has a better answer than just execute it in raw SQL and bypass Entity Framework. So hopefully you'll enjoy that presentation. Now let's jump into the first piece of news tonight, which is related to JK's session, and that is Entity Framework Core 6. What's in this, our favorite data access library? Well, there's a long summary here. I'll just quickly run through the main parts. The headline is they've done heaps of work with Cosmos DB. Entity Framework works, I think we can say, pretty much perfectly for SQL Server. Azure Cosmos DB, there is a few things that people have been complaining about, and that's the main thing. It's summarized quite nicely here. Here is the big feature, and I might just jump over here just to quickly summarize this. He essentially talks about, imagine that you have a scenario here where you're pulling data for blog posts and you're nesting and then you're getting some more stuff. And these queries are performing poorly. So if those queries are performing poorly, what do? If you know that you need to bypass Entity Framework, what's the best thing to do? Well, let's go and see what he says. I'll just skip ahead.
So I happen to know that this link query right now is too complex to be translated out of the box, which happens in some edge cases. But what we added in EF Core 6 is the ability to use raw SQL. So we can hit those edge cases and make them work. So I'm going to go to my DB context and I'm going to add a little snippet of code here that basically has a SQL statement.
So I'll just pause it there for a second. He's essentially saying the one thing that people wanted was a get out of jail free card. You don't need to use this very often, and when you do, you should make sure you document it and have good reasons for doing this. But that's the SQL he wants to inject in and bypass.
That's doing the same thing that link did, which is filtering the blogs based on the tag and then projecting the posts based on the tag. And then it has a wrapper method that takes any tag and projects it onto that SQL. So very straightforward. From SQL raw is what we use. We basically marry the tag to the SQL and we say to list async. So let's go back to our program and let's change this to await context get blogs with tag filter. The tag filter is going to be second, and I'm going to go ahead and run that. Let it execute this query. Let me make sure it's running.
Bingo, there you go, and it worked. So that is that option being added. What else did they add into EF Core other than the Cosmos support? They added compiled models. So this was a request because sometimes your models get very large. And when you get very large, they have a nice little blog post here. I might quickly show that to you. But essentially, when your models get large, let's look at the graph. Oh, they explain here why. Why is it slow? What is it doing? What are all those things that happen in your startup? And essentially, as your models get bigger and bigger, more properties, more relationships, more fields, it's bigger and bigger, you'll notice that the startup time gets slower and slower. Okay, so it's a fairly linear relationship. What's their fix? Their fix is not to do it on startup. In code, do it at dev time. So they're saying basically run this command here, or if you're using a NuGet package manager, you can run this command here instead. And then in your code, in your options configuration, add this. And then that will be done on the developer's time rather than the startup each time. So that's a useful thing. What else have they added to Entity Framework? They've added this configure conventions. So if you want consistency, they've given an example of here, if you want 2,000 characters on in your strings, how would you make that consistent everywhere? Well, they've got, they summarize it here and they talk how you would do that. For example, here's their example. Max length of all string properties can be configured to be 1024, and you would add this in your C#. If you wanted all your date times to be 64-bit integers, you would add this. And for example, if you wanted your booleans to be 0, 1 and extensible, you could add this. So that's how you're doing that. What else have they added? Well, they've added migration bundles. So this is an interesting one. If you have a large project and you're splitting it up and there's lots of pieces of your project, then you can use this. So for example, we have some large projects. They don't want the monolith story. They want it all split up, but you want to have one data context. So you can split this guy out and have it in a separate project. So that's what that's about. There's definitely a few clients that we already need that for, so that's great. Performance, there's stuff here about how it's improved the performance, and my fellow regional director Julie Lerman has a nice video on that, so you can learn all about that. Temporal tables, I think this is my favorite part of the whole story, and we've talked about this before, but when you have a record that is changed in a database and it is not what you expect, you want to know who changed that. Now you can use some hacks, you can put some triggers in SQL Server, you can put some extra code in your web API, but this temporal table solution is the way that is the best story going forward. Now, everybody's talking about GraphQL. For some people, they prefer it a lot more than REST, and that's the same story inside SSW as well. And there's some videos on that as well. So anyway, there's heaps and heaps of stuff. And I think you're going to be pretty happy with Entity Framework Core 6. Notice that it's called EF Core 6, and they haven't dropped Core even though we have .NET 6. So the naming is different, and that's been talked about as well. So let's jump in ahead and what other news do we have? We have had a major shift, not to just .NET 6, but also to Blazor. I would say Blazor is becoming, it's probably the most popular front-end technology we're using here. It's more popular than Angular and React, I think, or it's certainly level pegging. And now the tooling for that has not been as rich. So let's see what they've given us here. So here we've got a red line under the JSON serializer. You see that, you click on the little light bulb, you click using system text JSON, and it will put in the using statement for you, okay? We've had that for a long time. It's good that that's come to Blazor. Let's just say that we have a chunk of code and we want to refactor that. We want to pick that code up and throw it from the front end to the back end. You could select the text. You can then click this light bulb and say extract blocks to code behind. You'll see what it is. And then boom, it's moved. This one is probably the only one that we needed to have, and that is when we're looking at a method and we want to go to definition, we now have that. I think some people would call that a bug fix. All right, was so needed. Anyway, so there's lots of other things here. Oh, I think that you'll definitely want to know about hot reload. So let's just say we've got code here and we've got it, we're viewing it over here. We can just make the code change here. We can make the code change here. Then you'll see the code change is made. We click up here and we click the little hot reload button, and you'll see that changed over there. Okay, so that's the hot reload working, quite nice. And the default colors. So in the old days, Let me just zoom that in a touch. In the old days, it would look on the left. They're kind of got this weird highlighting. In the new world, it looks neater. All right, so that's the story there. And lots and lots more stuff. Now, next piece of news. I want to show you this GitHub code search. I think this is going to be really important. We're doing a lot of projects on GitHub. I'm sure you guys are too. So let's have a look at what they've added for us.
It's cool to search the world's code, but probably what's more useful is searching code relevant to you. And that's why we created this scope dropdown. If I click on this scope dropdown, I can choose to search code within just my organization, or code that I personally own, or I can narrow down to a specific repository. But the most powerful feature is to create a custom scope that lets me search a set of repositories that are relevant to me. I've already done this for my team, which is called the Blackbird team. So I'm going to narrow down to code relevant to my team. And now let's do a search. I'll just start by typing part of a file name, for example, .sql, and immediately find a bunch of SQL files as suggestions. Or I could type part of a symbol that I remember and immediately see a bunch of symbol suggestions. Let's try jumping straight to the definition of this class. And now you can see the second really powerful feature of the new code search experience, code navigation. So here we're in the code viewer, and you can see we have a bunch of extra symbol information, which is helping us quickly whip around our code base and navigate. For example, let's look at this function, inc contents loaded. I can, in a single click, search for where this function's being used. Here's the definition, and here's where it's being called. Let's jump and see more. And now we can see it's being called within this other function called lowercase content within a struct called lazy content. I hope you can see how the tight integration between search and code navigation allows us to not only get to the code we need to, but also follow the path to find exactly how the code works. Our code navigation is actually even better. We can also, for example, jump on one of these imports and jump straight to the definition, even if it's in another file. And in some languages, we even support jump to definition across repositories, which is super powerful.
All right. I think that gives you a bit of an idea what they're doing there. I think that's really exciting. It's great to have a lot of code at your disposal, but you've got to be able to find it nice and easily. And I think they've done some great work there, and I think that we'll enjoy using that. Of course, I'll be interested to know if you guys think that's cool. Definitely put a comment down there for the ones that you're finding cool or you think are not cool or missing features. So let's talk about GitHub Actions. So we've spent a lot of time over the years in Azure pipelines, build and release. We are doing more and more with GitHub Actions these days. Now, we want reuse. If you have a look at this example here, so these steps here, this is an action, and what we can do now is we can move that chunk into a separate action, throw it into the GitHub marketplace, and then call it like this. So now we can get a lot more reuse than we could have before, and we can reuse our own actions. So hopefully you'll like that. There is also this where we can move steps. Okay, so let's have a look at this, where we've got these steps here. We can move these steps into their own workflow file, okay, a YAML file here, and you can move that there. And so this code is a lot simpler, and we've moved that into its own file. So hopefully you'll like that. There's lots of other things. This one, what's this one? This is if you have a workflow. So if you have an action that you deploy and it deploys to staging, you might not want the person that can deploy to staging to be the person who is got the permissions to deploy to production. So you can you can have separate permissions for that. So that's all the work, and there's a lot of work being done on GitHub Actions. Okay, let's look at what else we have. What other news do we have? I found this one interesting. Microsoft Teams has definitely been one of the big success stories in Microsoft. And of course, clients are asking, hey, could we embed the ability to call in our app? And the answer has been no. You try to find some hacky clicks to open up Teams and stuff. But what if you just want to embed that in your own application? It's nothing to do with Teams. We want them to use just our app. So we can have a look at this and tell me what you think of this.
And I'm happy to tell you that the foundational capabilities you mentioned with voice, video, chat, SMS, and PSTN calling are generally available this month. There's been an amazing response to Azure Communication Services across various industries. And this translates to millions of voice and video minutes and tens of millions of chat and SMS messages as many of you experiment with custom app communication experiences. One of my favorite use cases is from Norwegian company Lærdal Medical, who provide training and education products for life-saving and emergency medical care. They developed a TCPR link app that uses Azure Communication Services to connect their volunteers administering CPR with medical dispatchers via video streaming. So they can get in-the-moment, just-in-time expert feedback as they perform CPR to improve the quality of treatment and patient survival rates. They estimate the app will reduce CPR error and save thousands of lives every year.
All right, so that gives you a bit of an idea. The Norwegians showing us great examples again. They do amazing stuff. They always seem to be popping up. Let's move on to the next piece of news. And imagine a client comes to you and says, all right, I need that record, that invoice, that vaccination, whatever. I need it put there and it cannot be changed. Throwing it into a database doesn't do the job. You can never trust who can change it. You need some method that it can be put there and it cannot be moved. Let's just say the legislation is it must stay there for 7 years. Well, now we have immutable storage. And this Azure Blob Storage option gives you the capability to store data in a write once, read many. That's known as a worm state. Okay, so that is essential for some compliance. Obviously, the big companies need this for some governance or legislation purposes. So that's immutable storage. We can now answer yes to that question. Moving on, next piece of news, bit of fun news, Notepad. I've been using this Notepad for, 20-something, 25 years, is it? And they've never upgraded it, even though it's been there the whole time. We can't even go file recents or tools options. It's ridiculous. But anyway, we now have it, and it now looks good. And what do you think the most important feature and how you can tell if you have this? You won't have it yet. It's rolling out in this Windows update coming. You will see search. See the search? So when you search, you have this up, down, okay, rather than the crummy search. So I've always been telling people, never use Notepad. It's kind of one of the first things you learn when you join SSW. You don't use Notepad. There's so many good alternatives, Notepad++, VS Code, etc., etc. Anyway, I don't have they have a better response now if they've got this. All right, let's move on to our last piece of news. And our last piece of news, I'm not sure if it's fair dinkum news, but Apple accelerates work on their car project. They're going to give us an automation vehicle. And I'm not talking about Tesla automation. I'm talking about a car without a steering wheel that looks like this. Now, I use autopilot in Tesla a lot, and it's pretty good, but it makes plenty of mistakes. So there's no way in the world I'm getting in one of these things without somebody on a steering wheel. But they think this is going to work. Well, I think it would be good if everybody's in them. That would certainly work. But when you've got randoms driving around, I'm not sure it's going to be as good. But anyway, maybe you might disagree. Throw a comment down there and tell me if you would buy this today, if it existed. If you'd buy it in 5 years' time, I don't think I'll be buying it. Anyway, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. I look forward to seeing you guys in the new year, and I will see you in the next one.